Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of My Horror Stories. D Bougie 86 back again, guys. That's right. If you haven't watched the previous episode of this series, check it out where I introduce what this series is. It's not me kind of doing a review, it's me just talking about a movie and my history with it, pretty much. Now, the film that I chose to talk about on this episode of My Horror Stories is a film from the 80s. Yes. Uh, it's a film that actually has interesting history with me personally, on a personal level. And I'm going to get into that in a minute, but this might shock you because because you really don't hear me talk about these type of movies that often on any of my shows or on video format, to be frank, because I just try to usually stay away from like doing reviews of these certain movies in that aspect. But yeah, you'll get to know what I mean when I'm telling you to reveal the movie. And that, of course, is Friday the 13th, Part 2. Yeah, I'm like, everyone's like, what? Yeah, exactly. Friday the 13th Part 2, I have a very interesting history with this movie. Now, for starters, this actually isn't my first Friday the 13th film that I haven't seen. Uh, this was actually, I think, maybe my second. This is the second Friday the 13th film I ever seen, ever, in my adult life or when I was growing up. The first, maybe fortunately or unfortunately, depends on who you are, was Jason Takes Manhattan. I remember like always seeing this cover in the VHS store. I'm like, I'm gonna rent this one first because it just shows Jason taking over New York. When I was a kid, I had no idea about like not. It was mostly Vancouver, you know. But yeah, it's yeah. I have an interest in. I might do a separate video on this one down the line to tell you my history with this movie. But Friday the 13th Part 2, back to this one. I'm trying to remember what age I was specifically when I first seen this movie. I want to say I was either 8 or 9. It was around that time period because I know I wasn't in my teens yet when I seen this. I was almost like a teenager. I remember renting this back in the day and taking it home. My mom's like, you can't rent that. That's bad. If you didn't know, my mother doesn't really like horror movies, so she doesn't really like me watching horror movies, which is kind of odd in that sense. I had to hear that mostly my entire life, guys. Oop, just hit my mic there for a second. But yeah, pretty much. I always hit that thing. Sorry about that. Pretty much, Friday the 13th Part 2 was. I didn't even see Part 1 until maybe a few years later. I want to say maybe 4 years later after I seen this one. Because pretty much I get the gist of what Part 1 was about because if you know this movie, it actually starts with like a recap of the last film and shows you what happened to Mrs. Voorhees and shows you what happened to the final girl, Alice, which became kind of a motif in a lot of franchise slasher films of this type going forward, where the final girl from the last movie ends up getting killed in the next movie. You know, that's where this kind of all stemmed to, was this film. Now, I took this film home, watched it, and actually, a lot of the flashback shit scared the shit out of me. That's another reason why I fucking didn't watch the first one for a while. Because when that Jason pops out of that lake, that's the first time I ever seen it, and I wasn't expecting it. I was like, what the fuck? You know, like, whoa. I was legitly terrified when I was watching this movie when I was at that age. Now, going to the actual story, it's pretty, looking at it in a, my eye perspective, it's pretty basic formula for like a Friday the 13th film. It has the same motifs of the first film, just on a little bit faster pace. and a little bit more grimier with some of the TNA shots. Like you got Butterface Girl, as I like to call her, because don't get me wrong, she's got a great booty shorts in this. But when her face turns around, I'm like, oh, what the hell? It doesn't match the ass, you know? I'm a bad man today, guys. This movie brought out some things when I was a kid. Like, I didn't even know I had that when I was watching this movie. But, yeah, so that happens, and, you know, you get to know the characters. And I like most of the characters. They're developed. You know, you have the kid in the wheelchair, and, you know, he gets the girl of his dreams finally, and, you know, he's like, everything works down there, you know? But then the kills start happening, and once they do, it doesn't let up, because that poor guy in the wheelchair, the first time I seen this movie, I did not expect him to get fucking hit in the face with a machete. And that's not even the worst of it. Then he falls down 4,000 stairs. He gets a death worse than Father Karras from The Exorcist. Man, oh man. But yeah, then you get Jenny, who is probably one of the best final girls of these movies. I love her character so much in this film when I seen it. She's got like that cute doll face kind of look to her, and you know, the way she reacts to the situations. Even like the beginning, like with her, you know, her buggy's all busted up and doesn't start and shit. I just like her, you know, she has kind of like a comic flair with her facial expressions, which I kind of dig about her character. And, you know, it's also great she has facial expressions when she's supposed to be terrified. She's a great pantomime actress. What's her name? Amy Steele. Yeah, fucking amazing performance throughout this, you know. But yeah, it's a good sequel, and I won't lie, this is another part of this movie that kind of holds great with my history with it. It's the first movie I actually had nightmares from. No, that's a lie. It's the second movie I actually had nightmares from after I seen it. The first one I'll do in a separate show, but yeah, it's. I remember waking up from cold sweats, but especially like the Jason in the window scene got me. It actually got me again because I knew it was coming, but it's like one of those things where it just happens and it happens, and you're like, oh shit, you know, because you know sometimes you think it's going to happen a second sooner than it actually does, but then when it does happen, it happens, and I always kind of forget that because I watch this one here and there. I don't rewatch these as much as some people may think. I actually just went through the first like 5 or 6 of these recently, and ironically enough, it wasn't on the Friday the 13th. Unfortunately, I had to work that day, so I actually did it on a weekend after the fact. But hey, I'm not perfect, you know. I can't sit down and watch these movies whenever I can sometimes. But yeah, this movie scared the shit out of me when a age where I never thought that would ever happen again. Sometimes it has. I get kind of emotive with certain movies, but this one does hold a special place. This is kind of a great gateway horror film in that sense, where it actually terrified me it got me at the right age, I guess. When I look back on it now, yeah, some of the shit, like especially like the Jason coming out of the lake thing, it doesn't really bother me that much anymore because I know it's coming. You know, sometimes I do look away though because you know I get like giddy scared when watching the first few Friday the 13th movies. But overall, it's a solid film for its type. You know, in the slasher genre. It's fun. It's a great like gateway horror film for the youngsters, and it will. I say, some scenes will get them. You know, I say. I would actually start with the first one now. Looking back on it retrospectively, I wish maybe I did that, but I'm kind of glad I had like this motif of actually, you know, picking movies because sometimes some weren't available than others in that sense in the video stores. Now you could just buy them all in box sets and marathon them that way, you know. Sometimes we didn't have that luxury as growing up as kids. So you got Jason Takes Manhattan and Friday the 13th Part 2 in some stores, you know. But overall, yeah, check this out. I highly recommend it. It's definitely one that sticks with me after all these years. That's why I wanted to talk about it on this episode of My Horror Stories. All right, guys, that's it. I told you it would be something special for the 80s, but I think I was getting that out there, knowing that I do have histories with certain movies that you might not think that I have. And yeah, it was a good story to tell, you know. And, you know, I told some motifs and some things about the movie that I do dig about it. And that's all I like to do it. Have you seen Friday the 13th Part 2? I'm sure a lot of you have, but what's your history with this movie? Let me know. So I'll let you go out there and just leave some likes and comments if you can. So I'll see you then. Bye-bye.